Are you on the edge of your seat? Because we're about to sound off with Kevin Williams, covering today's latest trends in location-based entertainment. Brought to you by the LBX Collective, your community to connect, engage, and inspire. All right, everyone, let's buckle up.
Hey, all right. Well, welcome everybody to Sound Off with Kevin Williams. This is episode number 126 for June 23rd, 2026. Kevin, it looks like you are still in a hotel. How are you doing?
I'm in a different hotel in a different city. I'm doing fine, thank you, Brandon. And yourself?
Yeah, doing great. Yeah, just got back from where you are. So right now, although when at the time of this airing, you will have returned. So
there will be a different curtain backdrop to me by the time of recording.
Perfect. All right. Well, as usual, how are you going to change my mind this time?
Well, I threw a hand grenade meme into the market a couple of days ago, and it fragmentated very well. Thank you very much. I just really want to keep on pounding the argument about what industry we're in, and following on from a very interesting sound off we've had, I think you may have encapsulated really what it is, which is it's the vibe coating, it's the vibe of our business. Even if you are doing such as our friends as lot of games likes to do, they've created a off-the-shelf arcade. They made sure that it is heavily socially vibe orientated, and maybe it's the Riz that we need to establish our market as much as the entertainment that we're offering.
I think something like a lot of games that has pretty much a fairly standard mix has to rely on that energy, the vibe, the feel, the look that you're going to have, the how flashy the cocktails are potentially, and so is it going to be Instagrammable? Like, are there places they can post things socially? Like, this is where you can really differentiate yourself in a market if you are still going to go without doing anything that is significantly unique or different in your attraction mix.
If you look at this facility and you look at some of the more tired amusement approaches, it is obviously going to generate that audience appeal, and that's really what this meme is trying to point out, that understand that we're creating an entertainment, an amusing venue, rather than just going through the motions and hoping a cookie cutter will suffice.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, coming up after the quick break, we will dive right into the
Intercard makes cashless easy with award-winning readers, self-serve kiosks, real-time reporting, and flexible guest payment options. From play cards and credit cards to mobile payments and QR codes. Since introducing the industry's first card system in 1989, Intercard has helped operators reduce cash handling, increase guest spending, and run smarter venues. Intercard is the world leader in cashless technology. If you aren't already part of their global family of customers, they hope you'll become one soon. Visit intercardinc.com to learn more.
Well, thank you for that. And we jump straight into the economy. Trending, really, I think this is more social engineering than economy, but I was trying to work out where to put it. The UK has followed Australia in instigating plans for a ban of under 16s to have social media. The parent groups are celebrating, the social media operators are angry and complaining, and they also can see the blood in the water, that if this is the beginning of people cracking down on social media, this could be the cigarette moment for them. But there is one thing that for whatever reason, our industry doesn't seem to have spotted the implications that this social media blackout in the UK will have on the customer base that we're aiming for. How many of the players and the e-sporters are under 16, and how many of the applications and tools, even the marketing tools for these game experiences, depends on that individual having access to a social media account. And this could be very interesting for some of the amusement pieces out there that have quite an active social media component.
Well, and it's not just the amusement pieces. Many FECs and LBE venues have leaned heavily on social for advance notice and advanced marketing before they open. Once they're open, really putting out a lot of content out there to drive that foot traffic in the door. And obviously not targeting just the parents. They're targeting all the different age demographics of which their particular venue is focused. And so this type of ban will have direct implications, especially if you see this move throughout other markets. I think it's quite some time before we see actual real legislation impact the North American market, certainly the US market, and then Canada maybe would be the next one to fall, actually, given their progressive nature. Wouldn't be surprised, actually, if they follow pretty quickly after Australia and the UK, France as well, other parts of Europe. And so I think this is something we need to be aware of and begin to think about how are we going to proactively shift the type of marketing and messaging we're getting out there to target the younger age demographics.
So let's mark a line in the sand, as it were. This is the 23rd of June, 2026. How long before one of the European or UK amusement trade publications actually works out that this is a problem?
Oh, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Well, we know one of those publications does follow sound off. And so I say, hello, just quote us if you're going to run a story on that. Okay. Moving on. And I really do need to get our friends at Microsoft in a room with a baseball bat, but that should be postponed. But obviously our friends at PowerPoint doesn't like our Steam. I apologize.
I mean, it's not postpone Ed Plus.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It's having fun there, but what has postponed.s or whatever is the C facility, C event, the Saudi Entertainment and Attraction Expo that had already postponed its planned May event to move to August. I had raised an eyebrow saying if the Middle East conflict was still going, I didn't believe that. Well, they've bit the bullet and they have now moved the Saudi event to June of 2027. And I can tell you now that there is financial implication with that double postponement. There is questions being asked by about the competence of the organization team, that they couldn't see, what the tea leaves, that they were not going to be able to just move it to August and hope everything was going to get better. This also has implications of the knock-on effect for the new Dubai show that is taking place in January, February, as well as the big 80-pound gorilla in the room, the IALPA plans for their Riyadh event. This will cause a serious crash. Then I am thinking that C may have made themselves irrelevant by their procrastination, really.
This is a relatively big issue. Pretty sure we have to go back and double check, but it called that this should not have been postponed. It should have been, and I know there's certain reasons for using the language of postponement versus canceling this year, postponing to next year when it comes to reservations and exhibit halls, et cetera. So if it's postponed versus canceled, et cetera, there's, fees. And so I understand the reason for the language, but having only pushed it out a few months was ill-conceived, especially when its counterparts had decided to push out while late, right? IAPA decided to do theirs too late. They did postpone it for an entire year, and they really should have done the same thing. Having been on the M&S side for many, many years, manufacturer supplier side, this type of herky-jerky issues are really painful. There's no question that already flights would have been rescheduled for August, and now they're having to be and lodging and everything else, and logistics of shipping and everything else. All that stuff has already been done, and now it's going to be redone again at a great cost to manufacturer suppliers. And they may question, should we even bother going to this expo next year and not just go to the others?
That's the most important part. From a consultancy point of view, we would never say, herky-jerky American phrase, knee twitch action from a UK point of view, where I think that they were ill-advised. If they were advised, if they made that decision internally, then they put themselves at a very bad position, because they've lost goodwill. And losing that goodwill, especially in a climate where no matter how quickly possible peace talks will prove productive, you shouldn't be looking at 2026 as a viable period to do anything, and they're going to pay the price. I think we will be saying something else about C in a couple of months, but again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Looking at the biz, and I'm going to have to seriously think about adding a section to sound off for new jobs. C-suite changes are plenty. Let's try and zip through these. Lucky strikes again, and now we have Bobby jumping into the chief financial officer role. He joined the company in 2023, and it's interesting that from my point of view, I can't really see an entertainment background that he's coming to, but I can see that there's been a lot of changes and musical chairs within the C-suite at Lucky Strikes Entertainment.
I think what this signals is the fact that while he did join the company in 2023 as its CFO and treasurer, the fact that he's being promoted to the role of president and still CFO, right? So he's still retaining a CFO title, but he's moving from treasurer to president at the board level. This does tell me that potentially it's a signal that he's being groomed to take over eventually as a CEO of Lucky Strike. And so, given the fact that he does lack entertainment experience, I do hope that he's been learning and gaining as much as possible about the entertainment industry beyond just focusing on the financials.
It is obvious from a corporate point of view, you're not going to find a perfect individual off the available job list that will be able to understand the 5 brands that you have. It is something that you're going to try and grow internally, and you're going to throw as much weight upon this individual so they hopefully will either sink or swim. And 3 years in is a short period of time, 5 brands to take on, and also to have the position of CFO and just presidential roles. It's a daunting chart, but it's a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, and our friends at FEG are in the hiring again. Our friends here, Jason has been with them for a period of time, but he also has credentials from Shaq as CFO there. He also comes from a restaurant experience with both McDonald's and the Dixie's barbecue chain. I'm not familiar with the Dixie's chain. Obviously, I'm familiar with McDonald's, but it will be interesting to see how his hospitality skills as well as his social entertainment skills are going to help in the CFO position.
I'm very familiar with Dickey's Barbecue. It's one of my favorite barbecue spots in the U.S. And so, but it is a franchise chain as well as McDonald's. And so, I think it's interesting that he's got a lot of franchise experience,
yes,
and hospitality experience, less on the entertainment side. I find what's more interesting is, and maybe it's a red flag, maybe it's not for FEG. Certainly would be something I would have teased out, is that he spent 1 year at Dickey's, 1 year at Shack, and now he's at FEG. And I always get a little bit concerned when I see that type of short tenure back to back at a high level. It's either a really great recruiters that are moving him through one place to the next, but it is something that I would be a little bit concerned about if I were FEG.
7 years with McDonald's and then 12-month tenures with the other companies. he either knows a really good recruiter, or, as you say, it's something that we're going to keep an eye on. We were talking, about Jonathan leaving F1 Arcade and the chaos and confusion. Then he was stating that he was going to become a long-term advisor for franchise operations. And now we see him parachuted into a position that I have never come across before, which either shows my naivety in C-suite positioning, but it does show that my typing skills are not fantastic. He's joining as a fractional CFO, supporting finances, legal, commercial, and fundraising. Fractional. I actually had to go and look what up in UK law what fractional is, and then I suddenly worked out that obviously No Strings is more focused on the US market. So this is more of a positioning. What it really means is that No Strings, which is kind of a rent by the hour paddleball turnkey system, i.e. there's nothing there. Everything is run by app. You buy your snacks by app, you open your locker by app, and these are warehousing. This is the periphery of Sportstainment for me, and it is getting very close to pickleball, so I am even less warmed to it. But it is an interesting departure from his previous role in competitive socializing.
Well, yeah, I mean, paddle is very similar, at least in some ways, to pickleball as it relates to these types of venues. So the gameplay is different, the equipment is different. So I'm not trying to make that direct comparison, but the type of venue is the same. And the one difference that No Strings is trying to do is bring some gamified elements to the game, so automatic scoring, etc., that you don't have to worry about that. You can focus on the play in the game. They are partnered with Lucra as well, which is interesting. So Lucra is, we've talked about Lucra before on this show. It's like sort of like micro betting app that you can then integrate into your experience. Dave & Buster's has played around with Lucra before in their venues, as have a few others that we've spoken about. So, it would be interesting to see where No Strings goes. I don't believe, have actually launched any physical facilities yet, or if they have, they are not rendering on Google very well at all, because it's very hard to get any actual information about what these guys are doing and where they are at in their process.
They, from the information that I have from the press releases and from their corporate site, is that they want to be the glue for existing facilities. So they want to acquire a number of facilities that will continue under their brand, but they will be powered by No Strings. And they're starting an acquisition spree in North America that will then move over to Europe. And in their corporate speak, they want to be the Top Golf or Flight Club experience for paddle. Watch this space. But again, it's paddleball, so maybe I won't be watching this space as closely as I would normally. Moving on, and Rec House has one facility open. They are just about to start trying to franchise heavily their hospitality, social entertainment mix, more restaurant with some entertainment, and they've just appointed a brand new general manager for their first facility that is opened, an individual with 20 years background with Dave & Buster's and 11 years with a restaurant chain. Ed, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I think, but it will be interesting to see if the skill set that he's bringing to the operation will help accelerate their rollout plans.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's probably the right kind of guy to come in and lead this facility, right? As a general manager, he comes with a lot of many year background at Dave and Buster's, so right in the wheelhouse. So, congrats to him. It's cool that he gets to go and play with something new. The Rec House has done some interesting things with regards to their attraction mix, their entertainment mix, and their overall look and feel. So, see how that goes.
Activate, we keep on talking about Activate and new franchise facilities, and I was not aware that they really didn't have a chief technology officer. They actually had their CEO doing a lot of that kind of role. And as we've been talking about with Activate, they've had some C-suite changes, and we see Scott now, standing up to the challenges of addressing the next phase of Activate's technology mix. Because remember, this operation, even though they have 71 facilities out there, they haven't really gone back and changed any of those entertainment experience, the ultimate of cookie cutter, as it were. And Scott comes with 8 years tenure at Top Golf. He also has 2 years tenure at Main Event, as well as some other experiences in the market. I really feel that he's got a poison chalice, because if you're going to start changing Activate to be able to compete with the other active entertainment facilities or social entertainment facilities that have what I would call active entertainment social components to it, you're going to have to really think out of the box.
Well, and that's where I really wonder, is he coming in to develop the games, or is he coming in to potentially unify the gaming, the management of the game experience? So, for example, understanding downtime for certain things, unifying the tracking of each of their different components, and when one facility is down, knowing it's down in advance. And so, basically putting those types of monitoring systems and unifying their technology stack across their locations. It seems a little bit crazy to me that they're only now bringing on a CTO at 71 facilities, but better late than never that they're doing this. And my guess is that he's going to be working more closely with whoever is developing the products on the creative side to make sure that they are sustainable and they can be managing them across a large number of locations in a unified way.
I understand what you're saying. I agree that it is needed. This is something that should have happened 3 years ago with the operation, and it would be putting a band-aid on a broken leg if you're just now catching up to this, because by the time you've got this automated system in place and you've sorted out those aspects that you outlined so clearly, you still have the same problem that I am trying to address right now, which is you're looking tired.
Right. Totally agree.
Moving on, and Conductor has really been, shaking up its operation. They're adding new blood, very young, new blood, very forward thinking. They have their operation, split into two groups. Their Game Loft operation, I feel, is kind of difficult to nail down exactly where Conductor ends and Game Loft starts. But either way, we're now seeing a new strategic partnership manager being dropped in as through David, and Maki is coming in as an executive producer. So that is the sorting out your franchise and sorting out your game development, if I want to be crude. And both of them come from some interesting backgrounds. I was Maki coming in with experience from HoloViz was interesting for me. Doing 3 years with those, and then a period of time with Scruffy Dogs, as well as Universal creative experience, kind of is the perfect fit for an executive producer coming in at this point in time. We know that Conductor are working on a lot of new game concepts, as well as their own facility concept, and so I expect the dream team that they're putting together will be driving this.
They're working on like 750 different concepts. So they are very, very dispersed as far as their focus, not only obviously for the products in the Game Vault line, their own facilities. They've got their Glow Court, which I don't think falls even under their Game Vault line. They've got their new Midway system, as well as then all of the custom work that they do for the other leisure and cruise industries. And so it'll be interesting to see where Dave ends up putting the majority of his time as the new strategic partnership manager, given the breadth of things that Conductor is involved in.
For the sake of some transparency, I've had some close links with the Conductor guys. It is a very family kind of orientation to the management style there, and I think they now know that they need to get a little bit more management. Those cats need to be wrangled a little bit. Moving on, and surprise, surprise, Immersive Gamebox has added to their C-suite. Kit comes from an interesting background, as in I don't really see him coming from an entertainment background, but much more from a global or business growth position. He is, in his earlier years, he's worked with the UK government and the Home Office, but then he's, kind of worked with strategic growth. He then joined Immersive Gamebox and now has been promoted to the position of vice president or senior vice president of strategic insight and delivery. Remember that our friends at Immersive Gamebox has pivoted from their original dreams of running single standalone entertainment units to now parachuting in their attraction into existing venues, to now developing their own standalone amusement style self-operated product. That will need some strategic planning. I hope that Kit has done the research into where this new machine is going to have to live. As we touched upon in a previous sound off about the number of what I like to call immersive enclosure systems there are in the market.
Yeah, I would love to see some fresh blood coming in at the senior level, but at the same time, he is clearly proven his ability, his leadership ability, and so congrats to him. And I hope they can figure out sooner than later their correct model going forward.
After their administration problems, which they have received investment to get out of, I think you usually see corporations like this try and keep as many of the original C-suite and then start just promoting them if they survived. We will see. Immersive Gamebox is on my radar for a number of reasons, especially the high price they have to pay for IP, and we will need to see how that works itself out. And then we touched upon this in a previous Open and Shut, the surprise news from Dubai that our friends at Boom Battle Bar had closed their facility there. The caveats are that Boom Battle Bar had reported a couple of sound offs ago that they had seen a same site drop in revenue, and that they had admitted that they were going to be wielding the red pen. And I think the red pen turned up at the Dubai site. They looked at their profits and losses, looked at where it was as a venue, and also the difficulty of operating within this region at the moment. And sadly, the facility is gone, and it was a real surprise disappearance.
Yeah, I mean, I commented on this in Open and Shut in the LBX show a couple of days ago, but this is both, I find it almost surprising, but also maybe not surprising given its location. Is inside of a DoubleTree by Hilton in Dubai, one of like 1,700 hotels in Dubai, and so the location itself was, not unique or stand out. And I think these types of locations that are inside of hotels both have the benefit of drawing from a captive audience, but also have the downside of sometimes just not being attended by the public outside of the hotel. They just feel reluctant to go into a hotel location, especially if there's not a second or separate entrance to the outside. So anyway, we don't know why this closed down. We don't know if it was a close partnership in the first place with DoubleTree by Hilton, or that particular franchisee who's running that DoubleTree. But it is both, again, unsurprising and a little bit surprising that a place in Dubai like this that's been eating these places up and has not found a market for it.
I've been doing a lot of research into the UAE market for a particular project, and I can tell you now that Boom Battle Bar approach differed quite considerably from how most of the region likes its competitive socializing. And I would argue that that may also be reflected in why Boom Battle Bar has been seeing a little bit of a drop in its sales. There are a lot of unknowns here, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more transparency as time moves on. I would have normally said, well, when we're out there for the Dubai show, but again, we'll have to put a pin in this one. A lot of surprise here. The company behind some of the Dolly Parton restaurant operations, they do a medieval kind of dining experience. The company World Choice Investment has been involved with that side. Not really what we would call location-based entertainment, but more experiential dining, I think, would be a better. And then suddenly, surprise, surprise, we wake up to the word arcade on the lips of World Choice Investments. They have gone to the local council in Florida with a proposal to create a mini golf, karting, and arcade facility that will be under the Dollywood brand. And I am sort of pointing this out. I know some media outlets have suddenly cottoned onto this news statement after the local media in the area ran this story, and this very weird picture of the artist's impression of what the arcade will be. I can tell you now that the word arcade won't be stuck on the front of that building, but something else. This is that Netflix house moment for the Dollywood IP, and this is going to be a very interesting one to watch.
It will be interesting to see how much of the Dollywood or Dolly Parton's touch is transposed or translated to this. It is a Panama City Beach, Florida versus a central U.S. Feel. So, definitely going to have to be slightly different just given the types of architecture that's down there. But I do wonder how much of that influence is going to carry forward into this location. Not surprising at some level that her organization feels the need to dip its toe into the LBE space. But it is interesting the attractions that she's chosen to go with, especially given the fact that there are other competitors with this mix in that very area.
Within stone throw.
Exactly, right? I mean, that is, and so, the virtual adventure site is interesting. Whatever a virtual adventure is, I don't know. That's definitely not a term that we've used historically in the LBE space. So maybe that is something of their own creation, or they're just, again, not as familiar with LBE, and so struggling to call out what the attraction actually is.
Who is driving this? Is this Dollywood, Dolly Parton Holdings, or is this our friends at World Choice Investment using their leverage and association with the Dollywood and Dolly Parton estate towards doing this? Again, we're surmising off of very little information, and we should have a lot more information closer to IALPA time in November. Moving on, and Lane7, turns around and they give us their numbers. They reveal happily that they've seen a like-for-like rise in their sales by 9%. They also, are very positive with the revenue that they've been bringing in. for the same period. They feel that they're on a positive trajectory, and we know from previous reportings in Sound Off that Lane7 and their other brands are on a rollout. We were talking only a matter of weeks ago about their Berlin facility opening, and we will also be talking about their Lane X facilities in coming open and shuts.
That's a significant increase in sales year over year, especially when we're seeing so many venues, especially tired brands, seeing a decline in year over year sales. The one question is, and so you might know this, is this just the Lane7 branded venues, or is this Lane7 itself and a mix of all the venues under that Lane7 parent corporation? Similar to the way Dave & Buster's like quietly blends in the main event numbers into their overall reporting.
First question I asked when the financials dropped, first question that was ignored. Okay. So fair. They haven't told us. We know that there's going to be a opening event in London for one of their properties. I'm hoping to buttonhole one of the executives and try and get a straight answer. But my feeling is I think they've roped all of their properties under this financial reporting. Moving on, and the big news carrying on from what we were touching upon in a previous open and shut, that 80-pound gorilla in the room regarding Dave & Buster's current openings in Texas and India is really no matter how quickly you are opening new facilities, is there something rotten in the house of Denmark? And we wake up to the information now, the third reporting under the new C-suite management, under the back to basics, under all of this, throwing the previous management team under the bus and everything's going to be fantastic and hunky-dory. We are looking at a decrease, 1.5%, from the same period in their same store sales, which is their same store sale operational number is down by 5%. And if you look closely at these numbers, I am not seeing an improvement. I am not seeing the super tanker turning one jot. And they have made some serious changes back to basics. They've dropped projects that have been started by the previous management. They have done unusual deals to try and, this year they're claiming that they're going to have 10 brand new IP amusement pieces under exclusives. We talked about the John Wick's game and the Stranger Thing games being dropped in as exclusives, and you would have expected, at least if these processes were achieving anything, that you would be seeing, all right, maybe not a total righting of the super tanker direction, but at least a positivity upwards from previous debt, not a continuation downwards. And the investment community is a very harsh one, and they will be looking at this, as well as understanding that these numbers also include main event in whatever way we can, we have to surmise, because they won't be honest about revealing that. We have already touched upon an exodus of C-suite positions, but we can also reveal that other positions that weren't sackings, but people feeling that it's time to jump off this merry-go-round. Dave & Buster's is a problem child, and it's about time our industry admits this.
Yeah, this is a problem. I mean, it's in some level it's unsurprising, but at another level it's certainly disappointing. And they need to fix their core offering. There is something fundamentally broken about what they are offering. But at the same time, I actually will also say that their marketing is absolutely fucking terrible. So they have, I don't know the last time they've refreshed their website. First of all, the marketing pieces available that are being distributed on social, that are available on their site, the promotions they're running are poorly marketed. Even when they get a new exclusive arcade piece with some expensive IP that they probably spent a lot of money to gain that exclusivity, they have done a poor job marketing. So I don't know right offhand who their CMO is or who's driving their marketing internally, but that is one of the main places, if I'm this new C-suite, would be focused on, is really enhancing and improving their marketing, their messaging, and their promotions. Something needs to turn around in addition to their core offering.
Who's their strategic director?
Yeah.
You're right, 100%. I cannot use their website. It is not functional for
terrible
anything. And I just hate the idea of, if I was doing a birthday party, trying to utilize it. There are serious problems that any industry consultant can see. For the sake of transparency, many years ago, under two previous C-suites ago, I actually did some observational market research for Dave & Buster's that was influential in driving the structure, which sadly our friends in the current management team seem to have foundered with. I will just say this: the last sound off, we made the bold statement about it's about the entertainment, stupid. And I would argue that that building that says eat, drink, play and watch, they'd better look at their play and do a lot less of their watch. But again, you can't carry on this trajectory without implications, and I wouldn't be surprised if another C-suite change or something even more drastic being forced upon them by their investment team. Moving on, and we had some information. It was nice. So when market intelligence operations, consultancies, market intelligence operations try and sell their marketing wares, so they'll give you a little bit, a sniff of the skirt, as it were, and they'll share some of their data with you. So they, JLL are known in the market as a relatively reliable firm for collecting market intelligence, and they, surprise, are including location-based entertainment as a trend worth watching. Obviously, they read their stinger report and follow their sound off. But I was interested from the numbers that they prepared to share for what's happening in the UK market, that they were saying this year they had calculated that there have been 721 plans over the year to open new facilities, and they gave a percentage breakdown of those 721. The largest percentage was trampoline parks. I would argue that they're active entertainment parks, but JLL are not specialists in location-based entertainment, and so they're calling them what they see them as. They then said family entertainment centers was next as the big slice, then competitive socializing. It was interesting to see that they had roped in competitive socializing into how they were defining location-based entertainment. Then escape rooms. I know their number is wrong if they've roped in escape rooms into that number. There are a lot more planned for opened and planned for this particular calendar year than would match these numbers, though maybe they have a specific definition of what they mean by escape and challenge rooms. Would they include activate, so we say, in that kind of calculation? Yeah. And then we have the art installations and selfie museums. Yeah, well, selfie museums are usually loss leaders as space fillers by malls. So I find it very interesting that you would include that in LBE. I know I'm being picky, but that's my job. And then there are others. I don't have a definition of what they put into others. So this is not really a snapshot of detail, but just the bare bones, light beer, to use an English expression, of what we already have revealed through our open and shuts. That bloody hell, there's a lot of openings going on.
So a couple of things I'll call out here. One is that I find it interesting at how big of a slice competitive socializing is taken out of the family entertainment center market, given the fact that 5 years ago, it's very likely JLL would not have even included this, or it would have been in the other category. Maybe 7 years ago, but I would really argue like post-pandemic, this is when they probably began to really track the competitive socializing space. And then when you look at the trampoline parks and kid zones at 60% of the projected openings, the problem with this number is that this is also falls in the franchises sold. So the trampoline park, adventure park space is heavily franchised. So they're not independent locations being developed. And a franchise promotes and announces how many locations they have under development alongside of how many locations they actually have open. So just a couple of quick numbers I ran while you were talking. Slick City has 100 franchise territories sold, but only 38 are actually open or active in development. So there's 62 right there out of the gate. Urban Air famously continually promotes that over 400 locations active or under development. Well, 178 of those are franchise locations under development in its pipeline. So right there, we've got about 250 of those 721 locations in development or plan to open just out of 2 brands. And so while that number is significant, you also know that it's a lot easier for me to go and buy an Urban Air franchise location and say, I'm going to option my 2 years by putting $30,000 down or whatever that number is. Putting $30,000 down, I've now optioned my 2 years to open up a location. And now that goes into one of these planned locations, and that may never actually get built. So that's, I think, a little bit of a misnomer on the trampoline parks and kid zone size that JLL maybe isn't taking into consideration.
And if we're a bit iffy about their trampoline and kid zone data, then we can be a little bit iffy about some of their other data. Again, this is not a detailed snapshot, but it gives us a little bit of observation.
Yeah,
I would, as one that sits on a database, an international database that looks very closely at this, I can pull the data out and give a reasonable approach to this. We could go away using the KWP database and do something like this, where I would be willing to stand up against a wall and answer towards the validity of this. But really, market intelligence operations compared to consultancies have a different target of what they're trying to achieve. And I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of the data for this particular survey came from our shopping mall friends. Yeah. But anyway, moving on, and the impacts that indirectly or directly hurt us in location-based entertainment. We have a war going on at the moment. We've reported on previously in Sound Off about the C-suite changes at Microsoft, or in particular their console game division, and the new CEO that has taken up the position has decided to kick all the tables over massive layoffs and throwing around the magic word reset. And many observers in the consumer games market think that this is a reflection towards Microsoft pulling themselves out of the hardware console business and doubling down on their games as a service aspirations, where you will be downloading everything. Your Xbox will be an Xbox Pass rather than an Xbox console sitting in the venue. And that was doubled down at when the new CEO said that they didn't see Sony or Nintendo as their competition for the future, but they looked at Tencent and the larger publishing empires as the people that they're going up. But I made a jokey meme at the time that quoted Yoda saying, the commencement of the console wars has begun. But really, the joke is here that if Microsoft pulls out of the console market and doubles down on a online, constantly connected gaming development approach, how long before Sony and Nintendo follow them?
Well, that'd be interesting. I would be very surprised that Nintendo ever moves away entirely from the console, entirely away from the console space. But this is an interesting move by Microsoft, but also not an entirely unsurprising move given Microsoft's overall focus and shift on the cloud and on providing a platform for both developers, in both commercial software, enterprise-grade software, as well as on the game development side. And so, focusing more on being a delivery of services and platformer versus a console maker.
They are number 3 in the console wars. What do? Do you come up with a better mousetrap and drop your prices and fight the competition, or do you get in a hot rod CEO that wants to turn all the tables over and change the fight towards going for the content and the online? I will point observers of Microsoft to the last time they parachuted in a firebrand CEO that totally turned all the tables over on their previous console generation, and he did such a bad job of it that they sacked him in a matter of weeks after he announced the brand new console system being more about playing TV programs and sports than playing games. Again, the new CEO comes from a background of content rather than consoles, and we will wait to see. The impact for us in location-based entertainment is that Microsoft is also wanting to become a transmedia brand, and a lot of those game properties will find their ways into our facilities directly or indirectly. Moving on, and another console company or game publisher, really 100%, our friends at Ubisoft, been going through a very tempestuous time with internal difficulties, with management structure, as well as trying to sort out creating good games. It's all about the games, as it says at the beginning of a number of these sound offs. Anyway, Ubisoft's turned around and they've closed 2 of their studios and dumped about 300 of their staff. That has direct implications to us. I know that some of those individuals had been involved in development of location-based entertainment properties projects. Those projects had finished and were released, and I assume that the Ubisoft accounting team worked out that they were surplus to requirements. That said, it will also change Ubisoft's positioning towards transmedia representations, as in they'll have to relearn those relationships that they had previously.
Yeah, indeed.
Jumping on, and the other 80-pound gorilla in the room that no one wanted to talk about. At time of recording, we had just reported, funny enough, I've just finished the coverage in the Stinger report, and I think by the time of we recording this, it might already be in the inboxes of our audience. Either way, we did a very extensive report from IALPA Asia that took place only a matter of weeks ago. We covered the trends, though pointing out that we'd just come from the AAA Expo where everything was there, and then coming, we didn't personally go, our sources did go all the way to Hong Kong, just literally down the road from Gajon. There wasn't that much new there, and it was reflected in the attendance. It's incredible to see a 25% drop in an Asian exhibition, especially one run by IALPA. You can't just brush this under the carpet and say it's due to the global conditions or the Middle East conflict or general apathy in the market. This is a serious individuals voting with their feet not to travel to Hong Kong, even though the Chinese market is very important. And it may explain why we saw so many executives at the AAA Expo that we didn't normally see there. Anyway, I asked nicely of the IALPA team, who sent me the press release and all of that, if they had an opinion about the 25% drop in their attendance at the Asian event, and of this time I haven't received a reply, but I'm sure I'm in the spam filter, or they're incredibly busy getting ready for next year's event, which is now taking place in Osaka in Japan, and interestingly a little bit earlier in the calendar compared to the previous Hong Kong event. Will I be jumping from Gajon to go to Osaka? No, it would be very difficult of me to find a reason other than a direct client request for us to go to IALPA Asia in Japan. When it was in China, yes, we understand. Vietnam and Bangkok and all of this, a little bit difficult. Osaka's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be cheap. And I will be interested to see, will we see another drop in attendance as people have to vote with their feet regarding being able to attend this, or will our friends at IALPA pull all their strings out and call in all of their favors and ensure that the Japan event is a stupendous success to cement their Asian position?
Yeah, they got some explaining to do, I guess, here. Don't really know, obviously, why we saw such a big decline. But this is a big deal, especially when the AAA Expo was so well attended by both exhibitors and attendees. To have this type of decline in 1 year is significant. And frankly, if they don't turn it around next year in Osaka, then this show, may be questionable. It's not one that IAPA can necessarily give up, especially given the fact that they've launched what is, basically 2 new expos in Latin America and in the UAE or the MENA region. But at the same time, this is a really expensive show on the manufacturer supplier side to go and attend. And if you don't get the attendees, as we were talking about AWE, while we were at AWE, if you don't get attendees, then you don't get exhibitors. If you don't get exhibitors, then you don't get attendees, and it can very quickly decline. And it's not something I'm sure IAPA has a desire to do. And so I'm sure there'll be some significant changes for next year.
I would observe that if Japan didn't work, they would revert to a summit kind of approach and move away. That's the benefit of how they have created their non-profit exhibition operation, which is if expos don't work, then we turn them into summits. If summits don't work, then we turn them into special bi-yearly events in certain regions as fact-finding. There are a number of IALPA fact-finding missions going on at the moment, which aren't exhibitions, but are seminars in disguise. This was a surprising one. That 80-pound gorilla that is the IALPA Association forced a lot of media not to focus on this particular story, but us suicidal individuals in the Stinger report thought we'd bring this to our audience's attention. Moving on, and a little bit of IP and a little bit of tech, things that did emerge from the IALPA Asia event was our friends at Brogent jumping into a very interesting partnership with Toho, the people behind the Godzilla universe, and they have created a flying coaster or a flying theater attraction based upon Godzilla. I've seen the trailer as well as a little bit of the show reel for it, and I really want to get on this flying theater and have a go at it. It's got some really interesting perspective effects. Brogent really flexing their flying theater chops here.
Yeah, totally agree. Would love to hop on this thing.
Maybe we'll have to go to the Japan IALPA Expo to get a
Yeah, maybe.
Again, stretching yourself and coming up with new content is important. iMotion, the remaining of the Western 9D pod VR experiences. The company has pivoted very heavily into zoological and aquarium business, and they have 2 pieces of content that really lead on that STEM kind of content. Their solar systems, planet exploration, obvious, and their dinosaur, equally obvious. They already have the bottom of the sea experiences. These just talk straight to the museum, aquarium, and science center markets.
Yeah, I mean, these are classic science center, aquarium, museum attractions, and they're going to keep banging them out.
Especially their relationship with SeaWorld and Merlin. I'm sure they want to have a diverse. I would argue that they should have had more content out by now, but they're catching up, and so we are here. This was one that popped up on my radar courtesy of analytics at LinkedIn. LinkedIn sort of saying this will be of interest to you. This isn't the first time that the analytics machine has actually proven useful for Sound Off and the Stinger report, but a company I'd never heard of, Fantail Games, they released a mixed reality experience, which I would argue kind of falls into the remit that our friends at Dream Park are trying to play with. It's using, from their information, they're using off-the-shelf Quest 3s in mixed reality mode and offering team-playing game mixed reality experiences. The video makes them look very interesting. They've never appeared on my radar. I am going to try and reach out to the company to see if they know anything about the location-based entertainment industry, or if they are just one of those many Quest developers that has now worked out that they're not going to be selling their content as a consumer product, but they're going to pivot into an industry that may be able to use their content, such as LBE.
It will be interesting. On their site, it is definitely like primarily focused in home. However, they do mention that it's a flexible play space. Set up your games almost anywhere. Play in the living room, a bedroom, or the home office, or even in a huge game room. And so I think this is where they're beginning to maybe recognize the fact that this could be deployed in a birthday party room or in a open space inside of a family entertainment center or location-based entertainment venue. So it will be interesting to, if you can get connected with these guys to find out what their plans are.
And that kind of is what we're going to talk about a little bit more about, companies pivoting towards location-based entertainment when we talk briefly about AWE. One of those company new facility openings that we touched upon in Open and Shut was the new Polish park, which, hypermedia is an interesting term to use in your facility branding, especially for an emerging market like Poland. But here we have an indoor destination that is doubling down on blending immersive entertainment and attractions, not just VR arena experiences, but projection mapped, and even an attraction developed by our friends at Attraction. This is an interesting site just on the paper that I would like to walk around and see how they've applied themselves. And it may be the right product for the right audience, because there is nothing like this in this region.
Well, yeah, nothing like it in its region, and it's, it is completely custom built. Yes. It is from ground up, greenfield, and really, really unique. We were talking a little bit in one of the panels last week at AWE, or one of the roundtables, about the integration of AI into these types of immersive experiences as well, to drive personalized experiences, to drive unique return visitation. And it'd be really interesting to see how that's deployed here alongside their immersive media and their motion-based attractions, and how they've really integrated AI into this. Or is it just a buzzword that hasn't been fully deeply integrated yet into the overall guest experience?
Yeah, their web page makes some serious claims about what they're trying to do here. Mm-hmm. I would argue that the general manager, the curator manager, is going to have the hardest job in the world, because you're not going to be able to sit on your laurels. You're going to have to be constantly reinventing the experiences available here, because no matter what you say, this is not a one and done. You really do need to see a repeat visitation, or else in 24 months we'll be talking about a project that is changing hands. So again, one that we will keep an eye on, especially in the Polish market, which is an emerging phygital market, let's put it that way. A bit of news that came in just as I was getting ready to go to the third day here at AWE. Fever again. And I noticed that a number of the media doesn't seem to have run this story yet. I don't know if it's because the press release is only a couple of hours new, or if they don't see the relevance of this. But just For those that are listening, our friends at FIFA have inked an official suppliers relationship with Formula One. This relationship will deal with brand ticketing, so they will be creating a specialist portal for F1 ticketing. They will also be working very closely with the F1 webpage to incorporate certain pricing systems. This is a 5-year global relationship, so a real long-term one. No word if this will have an impact on F1 Experience or F1 Arcade, but I'll tell you this, I wouldn't be surprised.
This is remarkable. This is the big move up market for Fever. They've obviously historically, as we've talked about them here, focused on location-based entertainment experiences, not big fucking races globally. And I think to be the primary ticketing partner for something like an F1 brand is a big, big step up. And will be interesting to see how it is facilitated at an actual event, right? Are they looking to be the next Ticketmaster? Where are they looking to find themselves in the broader ticketing platform space?
This is a momentous, not to see our industry see the implications of this deal kind of tells us a lot about how myopic sometimes our industry can be regarding these big developments. This will have implications, and I wouldn't be surprised if I wake up in a couple of days' time and then suddenly FIFA's done a deal with FIFA. If you're going to do a deal with F1, then why aren't you going to do one with the NBA? Why aren't you going to do one with the soccer sector? Why aren't you going to do one with the golfing sector? This is a pivot. Transmedia. How many people are going to wake up to that bullywig that we've been going on about here? I'll get that "Told You So" t-shirt out of storage. Moving on, and our talking point, I'm living it at the moment. AWE is taking place right now as the time of recording. I'm just going to jump into my penguin suit and go to a gala event for the awards ceremony. But for those of you that aren't familiar with this, Brandon and myself are out at Augmented World Expo. This is the premier event for everything to do with XR technology, applications. It's bigger than CES regarding its applications. And this is really a festival within a festival. It's an event where the technology is shown to investors and to developers, and new concepts are released. It's not that heavy on the public side, even though public do attend usually on the last day, but it is more focused on, this is the ultimate in trend setting. I am lucky enough to be here as we have incorporated, as you've been bored senselessly over the last 12 months, added to Sound Off. We've been involved in growing a component of this, which will now talk to location-based entertainment experience. But more about that as we jump in. The big opening event took place a couple of days ago. The team had a record attendance. It's broken records, and that is telling. We know that consumer VR is in the doldrums at the moment, but AI and smart wear glasses are in the ascendant, and it was reflected, the investors and the people that came here, a lot of tire kickers, a lot of people wanting to see the new hotness. Specs, part of Snap, decided to launch their brand new augmented reality glasses. These aren't AI glasses. These are display glasses. These were the glasses that our friends at Versus Immersive had intended to use in their augmented reality experience. And it was incredibly telling that, Snap spent a vast amount of money in supporting this event, really did double down, and they were demonstrating their new system, and they actually created a kind of location-based entertainment experience to show off their new system, with their block battle 4-player game experience. I haven't done that. I'm doing that in a couple of hours' time to see how much of a game that they've created. But it is clear that the new specs headset glasses system is aimed at consumer, though consumers with very deep pockets.
Yeah, deep pockets for sure. I think we were all a little shocked at their north of $2,000 price point for one of these, especially in a commercial or location-based entertainment application where, somebody's going to need to buy 10, 20, 50, 100, depending on the type of AR or MR type experience that they're using these for.
I'm going to have a conversation with the Snap team to see now post versus what their positioning is or regarding location-based entertainment. They are in the glow of launching a brand new product. They're also in the firefighting business of launching a new product that's got people suffering sticker shock. So, I think it may be a good idea to give them some time to cool down after AWE, which can be quite an arduous show. The winner of the head-mounted display industry over the last 10 years is not Meta, is not Pico, is not HTC. It is Samsung. And Samsung was at AWE in force. For every headset sold out there, be it a PlayStation 2 VR system or any of the Oculus systems or any of the Pico systems, the displays are all made by our friends at Samsung. So they are the winners, and Samsung was at the show showing off their new entry into the mixed reality sector with the Galaxy XR system. And these guys know that they don't really care which industry is going to be the winner, as long as they still keep on using Samsung headsets. Though their relationship with Google kind of tells us that they have an inkling of where they want to continue investing their R&D into, and it was very telling. Our friends at Qualcomm don't really care if it's consumer or enterprise, as long as you're using their chips, and they used this event to launch their new Qualcomm Snapdragon Elite chip system that will power the next generation of smartphones, the next generation of laptops, the next generation of mixed reality headsets, the next generation of smartware. They are ubiquitous as a provider of the processor systems. You kind of see a pattern here. It's not about the brand, it's about the platforms and the products and the delivery. And this is a lovely snapshot that AWE gives us. Over 17 years of running this trade event kind of proves that they know their chops. And then our friends at Pico were here. I've never seen so many ByteDance executives wandering around, and I've never seen so many new Pico executives sweating heavily as they position to launch their new system. They're going up against the Apple Vision Pro. They're going up against the Horizon XR. They're going up against what is now seen as a new form factor in headset technology. But at the same time, Pico was quite happy to say that they are still 100% supporting the commercial enterprise side. And they were waving the location-based entertainment flag. They were sponsoring a number of the exhibitors at this show. And, I was breathing a big sigh of relief, because I'm the poor dancing monkey up on the stage trying to promote this. I am grateful to the AWE family for allowing us to be driving a new component of their extended family. They had a new enterprise component to this year's event. They had a new immersive art installation component to this, and they had a brand new game and location-based XR component. And from those individuals that wanted to find a comfortable place to sleep during the conference session, we had a large attendance of those coming to learn from a great lineup of presenters that were trying to bring a new theory to AWE. It was interesting, the questions I was asked after my presentations and some of the other presentations from people who are now doing serious research as they pivot their operations from, depending on the meta gravy train, towards now looking at where they leverage their business going forwards, and seeing LBE as an acronym that they need to know more about. We had a nice selection of companies that all had toes or complete bodies in LBE. Our friends from VR Caves, Synthesis, HoloLabs, Dream Parks, the list goes on. You'll have to wait for your Stinger reports for the full list. But we also had secondary companies, companies that are directly or indirectly involved with LBE, such as our friends at Cleanbox with their hygiene systems, such as our friends at B Haptics with their haptic vests and technology. Brandon had a chance to wander around the show floor fully. I've only halfway through that. Any of the LBE stuff that jumped out at you, sir?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few small like startups, I would say, that didn't necessarily jump out at me from something that is immediately deployable inside a facility, but that they are clearly dancing around the location-based entertainment space. A lot of it is coming out of universities, actually, and some smaller developers that are trying to come up with new ways to use this technology inside of a venue. And so, some of them actually very directly seemed like a competitor or future competitor to Dream Park or A Station. But I would say nothing that I felt like was immediately going to see its way into our sector within the next few years.
The hardest part about this is the chicken and egg syndrome, which I've been talking with a number of the... It is easy to say we're going to add an LBE component to an existing XR conference, but the two arguments are, will you get enough exhibitors and will you get enough operators? Will they just be showing and demonstrating to the choir, or will they be able to get the congregation to come? And it's been very hard to kind of start the engine, but now we have started the engine, the interest is there. Kind of supported by the changing fortunes of the consumer VR sector, and now by the drive in investment to find a safe pair of hands, and bricks and mortar and location bases seem to do that. I feel it will be much easier for next year's 2027 LBE component to benefit from the green shoots that have been planted at this event. One of the most surprising things for me is I used to write for a consumer B2C facing portal for the consumer VR sector, and they just turned around and said, 10 years on, can you please start again talking about LBE in our service? So that's kind of telling us that a giant reset has taken place. And the Augie Awards reflects that. I was one of the judges. If you're not familiar with the Augies, this is a awards ceremony that picks out greatness and innovation in the XR sector. And we've now added an LBE component to that, which will be awarded in a couple of minutes' time from where I'm sitting of time of recording. It was interesting to see some of the technology being used in what some would say non-VR application, but I would say XR capabilities. One of those was our friends at Virtuix, who has a long lineage over the last 10 years in the location-based entertainment market, but has pivoted heavily towards their consumer VR sector, even floating on the NASDAQ based on that. But they're now also finding their technology being used a lot more in enterprise, and there was one of their Omni One omnidirectional systems being used with a robot that was walking around the show floor, allowing the controller using 3D glasses and an immersive projection environment to steer that robot. A lot of those robots out there aren't really robots, but they are radio controlled drones.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons why I didn't recognize that it was a Virtue X Omni 1 device sitting there. I walked past this a couple of times and I was a bit perplexed because it was not their standard VR installation and was definitely not focused on the consumer application at all.
No. So, this is kind of what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot. We're going to benefit in location-based entertainment. Companies that were going to be developing the smallest, fastest hotness are going to now have to pivot into a market where they're going to sell comparable amounts. We saw our friends at Microsoft pull out HoloLens. That left a number of companies high and dry. We saw our friends at Magic Leap pull out their headset away from the market. That left people high and dry. And so we're now seeing the companies in China that were going to manufacture these systems, they're not going to be left high and dry. If they created a fabrication plant, all they have to do is change some patents, round the corners on the design, and they'll re-release them. And there was a company that was showing a product on the AWE floor, which is fundamentally HoloLens 2 repackaged and redeveloped under a Chinese manufacturer. And I know a number of companies that will shake their arm off to have an alternative after they were left high and dry by Meta and Microsoft. Sometimes the I'm taking my ball away and you guys can't play anymore mentality doesn't work when you're having to think of considerable fab. I don't want to go too much into all of this because it's still pretty fresh with me, and I know that there's going to be more developments. I think this is a valuable opportunity for a guest gab. Brandon, I don't know if that's
absolutely
we should consider. Okay, well, maybe we should also let our audience vote with their feet whether they want to hear us go into more detail. I can tell everyone that didn't go to this event for various reasons that they will be suffering FOMO from this. There were opportunities that did materialize. I can understand that you can't go to every event. And especially at this time of the year, you're focused on sales and opportunities. But sometimes you need to go to where the B2B is rather than the echo chambers are. And I will be working very hard. Well, we have to do the postmortem with the show organizers about what we're going to do next. But I'm also hoping that we will be taking the love of LBE to their other shows. AWE runs a show in Europe that I've presented at a number of times, and they also run an Asian event, and we'll look to try and make sure that LBE's flag is unfurled at all of these events.
Yeah, indeed. All right, well, it was a great sound off, Kevin, and we will see you on the next one.
Have a good one.